They say justice is blind, but sometimes the smallest mistake can unravel the most carefully laid plans. Today, a man's arrogance will become his downfall, brought down by none other than his own words.
Court is now in session. The defendant, Leonard Sloan, is charged with the murder of his housekeeper, Eliza Carter. Prosecutor, you may present your case.
Your Honor, the defendant, Leonard Sloan, murdered Eliza Carter, a woman who had worked for him for 18 years. She was found dead in his home at midnight. Neighbors reported hearing her screams. Additionally, we have evidence that security cameras were deliberately disabled at the time of the incident.
Mr. Lawson, your imagination is quite something. A housekeeper. Seriously? Do you honestly believe that I, Leonard Sloan, a man running billion-dollar enterprises, have time to concern myself with a mere servant?
Leonard Sloan saw this courtroom as just another stage, another performance. To him, this trial was nothing more than a farce. What he failed to realize was that his own words would become the very evidence that sealed his fate.
Mr. Sloan, when was the last time you spoke with Eliza Carter?
I don't know, maybe a week ago? I don't usually waste time chatting with the help.
Interesting, because your neighbors claim they heard you arguing with her the night she died.
Nonsense! I would never tolerate a servant raising their voice at me.
Mr. Sloan, I suggest you grasp the gravity of the charges against you. Control yourself.
Sloan shot the judge a condescending glance, his smirk never faltering. He believed in his power, his influence. He had money, connections, but in this courtroom, the only thing his wealth could do was delay the inevitable. Leonard Sloan had too much faith in his power. He believed himself untouchable, but some chains are invisible, and once they lock around you, breaking free becomes impossible.
Prosecutor, you may present your new evidence.
Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Eliza Carter was the defendant's housekeeper. She dedicated years of her life to his service, 18 years to be exact, and just hours before she was found dead, she sent a message to her closest friend. Do you know what she wrote? My boss was furious with me today. He threatened me. If I don't make it to tomorrow, don't be surprised.
A heavy silence fell over the courtroom. This was the kind of evidence that could break a case wide open. Eliza Carter had foreseen her own fate, and now her voice echoed through the courtroom.
Oh, please. Look at this drama queen. She must have known she was about to be fired, so she decided to stage her own little tragedy, feigns exaggerated shock. This woman practically wrote her own script.
Sloane's words rang through the room. A few jury members shifted uncomfortably. A murmur rippled through the spectators, but he didn't notice. He still believed he was in control of the game.
Mr. Sloan, you will not speak about the victim in such a manner. Consider this your only warning.
Oh, of course, Your Honor. I'm sure you believe she was an angel, don't you? Come on! Have you even looked into her background? She was in debt, broke, desperate. Maybe she got herself mixed up in something. Maybe ... Maybe she just tripped and fell.
A chilling tension filled the courtroom. Sloane's words revealed more than his arrogance. They exposed his complete disregard for human life. But what he didn't realize was that every word he spoke was reinforcing his guilt in the eyes of everyone in that room.
Mr. Sloan, are you seriously referring to Eliza Carter's death as an unfortunate accident?
Listen, Mr. Lawson. Everyone who works for me knows how lucky they are. If Eliza Carter, like an ungrateful fool, couldn't appreciate the opportunity she had, well, that's her problem, not mine.
His words hit the courtroom like a hammer. A few jurors exchanged uneasy glances. Judge Clark studied Sloan intently. But the person most affected was Eliza Carter's family. In the back row, an elderly woman wiped away silent tears. It was her mother. Hearing these cruel words about her daughter, she let out a deep, pained sigh.
Mr. Sloan, I strongly advise you to control yourself. You are standing trial for the death of a woman, yet you treat this courtroom like a stage for your arrogance. This is neither a place for theatrics, nor a forum for your lack of conscience.
Leonard leaned back slightly in his chair, feigning indifference. But that smug smile remained. He still believed his money would protect him. But Judge Clark never took her eyes off him, because Leonard Sloan had just made a crucial mistake, one he hadn't even realized yet. Sometimes, the smallest details reveal the biggest secrets. And Leonard Sloan, without even realizing it, was about to set the stage for his own downfall. Judge Clark never took her eyes off him. She had caught something small, yet powerful enough to change the course of this trial.
Mr. Sloan, where exactly were you on the night of the murder?
Your Honor, how many times do I have to say this? I was at the club. The staff can confirm it.
According to the club's entry records, Mr. Sloan checked in at exactly 9 p.m., Security footage corroborates this.
I see. But just moments ago, you said you were at home at 8 p.m. Now we know for certain that you arrived at the club at 9 p.m. So tell me, Mr. Sloan, where were you at 8:30 p.m.?
A sharp silence swept through the courtroom. The jurors exchanged quick glances. To some, it may have seemed like a trivial gap, but in reality, it was a gaping hole. For 30 minutes, Leonard Sloan's whereabouts were completely unaccounted for.
You really love the details, don't you, Your Honor? But I'm sorry to disappoint you. At 8:30 p.m., I was in my car, driving to the club. That's all there is to it.
Driving, were you? Interesting. Tell me, during this drive, did you use your phone?
No, I never use my phone while driving. I'm a responsible citizen who follows traffic laws, after all.
Well, that's fantastic news, because when we reviewed your phone records, we discovered that you made a call at precisely 8:30 p.m. Now, Mr. Sloan, if you were really driving, how exactly did you manage to have an extended phone conversation at the same time?
A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Leonard Sloan tried to maintain his smirk, but for a brief moment, a flicker of panic flashed across his eyes. He had just exposed himself, without even realizing it.
Mr. Sloan, your phone records confirm that you made a call at 8:30 p.m. Yet, just now, you stated that you were driving. It seems highly unlikely that you could have driven safely while engaging in a long phone conversation. So tell me, where were you really?
Do you honestly think you've caught me in something? Maybe my assistant made the call. Maybe someone else was holding my phone. Who's to say?
Well, Mr. Sloan, that's quite a theory. But unfortunately for you, there's one small problem. We retrieved an audio command from your phone's records. At precisely 8:30 p.m., a voice command was recorded saying, "Turn off the lights." Now, Mr. Sloan, if you were driving, which lights were you turning off?
Sloan's face tensed for a split second. It was such a small, insignificant detail, but sometimes the tiniest cracks cause the entire structure to collapse.
Mr. Sloan, don't you think this is a rather convenient coincidence?
Nonsense. This is just a misunderstanding.
But everyone in that courtroom knew this was no misunderstanding. Judge Clark never looked away, because Leonard, in his arrogance, had just made a much bigger mistake than he realized, and the consequences were about to escalate. Arrogance can blind a man to the danger right in front of him. Leonard Sloan believed he was untouchable, unaware that every move he made was tightening the noose around him. And as he took one step closer to the edge, the walls around him began to close in.
Mr. Sloan, we analyzed your phone records. At the time of the murder, your phone signal places you at the construction site.
Lies! This is ridiculous. If I was there, then your so-called security cameras would have caught me, wouldn't they? You're wrong about everything. If I had really been there, my phone would have recorded something, anything that could prove it. So clearly this is just some fabricated nonsense.
But Sloan's anger wasn't a defense. It was an unraveling. Every furious outburst, every moment of desperation only pulled him deeper into the trap.
But Mr. Sloan, no one here said you were at the construction site. You did. Your phone's location data confirms it.
Wait, no, this isn't possible.
His voice shakes, the confidence draining from his face, replaced by sheer panic.
The facts don't lie, Mr. Sloan. That phone signal doesn't just place you at the scene. It proves you have something to hide.
Sloan had spent his entire life believing he was above the system, that his wealth made him untouchable. But now, every escape route had collapsed. His innocence was slipping through his fingers, and with every passing second, the inevitable drew closer. Justice isn't just about evidence, it's about the choices we make. And today, Leonard Sloan's arrogance, his crimes, and his lies had finally caught up with him. In the end, it wasn't the prosecution that brought him down. It was his own words.
This court has reached its verdict. Leonard Sloan, you have been found guilty of murder.
Justice has prevailed. Leonard Sloan's wealth, his arrogance, and his manipulations couldn't save him, because in the end, the truth always comes out.
For years, Sloan had believed he was in control. He had built an empire on power and intimidation. But in the end, the only door his wealth could open was a prison cell. Because sometimes, even the smallest slip of the tongue can be the blade of justice itself.
This can't be happening. I had everything under control.
Yes, he had control. But there was one thing he had never accounted for. Something small, yet far more powerful than he had ever imagined. The truth. And in the end, that truth delivered the only verdict that ever mattered. Justice had finally been served.